mother, brother, best friend, sister, lover. The women gather, crying tears that fill a million oceans. It doesn't matter where you're living. The women gather, crying tears that fill a million oceans.
And thank you for joining us for the third part in our Amplifying Black Female Voices community conversation. I'm Kelly Rausch, and I'm the Executive and Artistic Director of the Classic Theater of San Antonio, and we're thrilled that you can be here with us this evening. Tonight, our facilitator and our panelists will all be answering questions that you, the audience, have sent in to us. So thank you for taking the time to send in these questions. The time of the event tonight will be going until 8:30 is our planned time. And please know this is a safe place. All trolls and their comments will be blocked, removed, and hidden. And now it is my pleasure, if you have not been with us the past two sessions, to introduce you to our facilitator and a panelist as well tonight, Cynthia Freeman Gibbs. Cynthia Freeman Gibbs also writes as C.F. Gibbs. She's the author of Reasonable Insanity, a Dr. Olivia C. Maxwell novel, and contributing co-author in United Black Writers Association, Writing is Essential. She anticipates the release of 2 additional books in 2020, which includes the sequel to her debut book and a modern-day twist of Jack and the Beanstalk. Cynthia is a native of Lansing, Michigan, and MBA graduate of Florida A&M University, who is enjoying life in San Antonio with her husband. She volunteers her time in service at her church with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc., and several organizations. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you, Kelly. And thank you again to the Classic Theater of San Antonio for opening your doors for this conversation. We've had some really great conversations previously, and I'm looking forward to it tonight. So last month, our panelists shared their thoughts with all of you on ways that we can move forward in order to create differences in our communities. And we asked the audience to examine yourselves and make a personal commitment to take action to bring more equity, justice, and inclusion to our country and to the world. So we have received several questions, which we appreciate from our listening audience, and we're going to speak to those questions this evening. So thank you for taking the time to submit those questions, and we will do our best to respond to all of them as we go throughout the evening. It is now at this time my pleasure to reintroduce you to our panelists. So first we have Linda Nance. Hello, Linda. Okay, so Linda was born and raised in and educated in Texas. She earned a bachelor's degree in biology and French, a master's degree in higher education, and a master's degree in education administration. She's been married for almost 50 years to Herbert, and they have 2 children and 1 grandchild. Over the years, she has held many leadership positions in her church and in community service organizations. She has served over 30 years in public education and has been recognized for many different achievements throughout her career. In 2014, Linda retired as principal. In retirement, she continues to mentor school leaders by providing her expertise and knowledge. Welcome to the conversation, Linda. Next, we have Deborah Omowale Jarman. Hi, Deborah. Deborah is a Classic Theater board member and a retired civil servant who relocated to San Antonio to be a close-by grandmother for 5 of her 9 grandchildren. Known as a community advocate and a lover of history, she is thrilled to be living out her personal mission statement of leaving a legacy of love and service to family and the community through her current position as the Executive Director of the San Antonio African American Community Archive and Museum, otherwise known as SACAM. Welcome to the panel, Deborah. Our next panelist is Danielle King. Hello, Danielle. Welcome to the panel. Danielle is the co-founder of the Renaissance Guild, San Antonio's premier Black theater company, and she is honored to be included in this conversation. She has 25 plus years as a professional actor and singer, and her recent works include Divas of Eastwood, The Return, Newsies, Fanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike, and Smokey Joe's Cafe. Her favorite performances are Ragtime, African Folk Tales, Hairspray, Blues for an Alabama Sky, Steel Magnolias, and Ethics Follies. She has won numerous Alamo Theater Arts Council Performance Awards and really enjoys teaching theater to all ages. Danielle, welcome to the panel. Next, we have Melissa Sledge. Hi, Melissa. Melissa is an Austin-based actor and fitness professional that is best known for her 50-pound weight loss success featured in Shape magazine. When she's not promoting healthy living principles, she is a student of the Carol Hickey Acting Studio Conservatory program. Melissa is originally from Kansas and attended Arizona State University, where she earned her bachelor's degree in business and interpersonal communication. Melissa is a member of the Junior League of Austin, in addition to serving on the board of Wheatsville Co-op. To learn more or work with Melissa, please visit her website at melissasledge.com. Welcome to the conversation, Melissa. All right, so there you have your panelists for this evening. I'm going to ask for all of them to come on to video. And as they do that, before we begin responding to the questions that we received, I would like to ask this question to the audience and request for you to respond in the chat. And at the end of the questions that we will review, I will then go over the questions that we received from each of you. So your question is, what steps have you, the audience, taken as a regular citizen to have an impact on our community to improve race relations? What have you done to help? So again, please share with us in the chat section what your answer is to these questions. So let's get into the questions that have been submitted. The first one is in reference to comments, and I'm going to read these questions as we receive them. To comments that this person hears a lot from a close relative, in which they say that until all lives matter, we are going to keep having all the same issues. It's awful that a Black man got shot by a cop, but what about other citizens who got shot? Why don't we react the same way when that happens? No one seems to care now unless it's a Black person getting shot by a white cop. If you keep saying Black Lives Matter, you perpetuate segregation and prejudice. Not my words, but I'm at a loss of how to respond. So I'm going to start off by answering this question, and then we have members of our panel, Deborah and Danielle and Linda, who will also respond to this question. So first of all, Black Lives Matter is a focus. And I want you to think about how we consider, when you think about cancer, cancer is a disease that we all wish that there were a cure for. However, sometimes we have a focus on one particular cancer, such as breast cancer awareness. During that month, there are all kinds of activities and 5K races and marathons. There's lobbying for funding and research in order to raise awareness around breast cancer. It doesn't mean that all the other cancers don't matter. If someone says prostate cancer is important too, it is important. It's just that right now we're focusing on breast cancer. So until breast cancer matters, then all cancer, breast cancer has to matter in order for all cancer to matter. So that's the same thing with Black Lives Matter. Black lives have to matter in order for all lives to matter. So that's my thought on that. Now open it up for whoever wants to jump in. Oh, Danielle, we can't hear you. If you can turn your mic on.
Thank you. I was going to say, I'll save my comments till after Deborah responds.
Okay. All right, everyone. We've been together for a while, so we know each other. So Cynthia very eloquently put, the challenge is for over 401 years, what we're teaching in school is that slaves came to this country in 1619. Well, actually, Africans came prior to that, but I'm not going to take us down that road. But anyway, let's just stick with 1619 for now. So 401 years ago, we were forced as descendants of Africans to come to this country. We were not considered a life. We were considered property. So in so many ways, just like you hear African Americans are dealing with PTSD, genetic PTSD of slavery, I believe there are others that are dealing with PTSD of being, let's say, plantation owners. And if you continue to treat me as chattel or property, then you don't recognize that I am a human being. So we have to start from the very basis of the fact that historically I was not thought of as a human being. So when you hear me chant Black Lives Matter, it is first reminding you that I'm a human being. And it doesn't matter that you may see me as different, but if you cut me, I will bleed and my cells will look very similar to yours. So until you recognize that my life is just as important as everyone else's and that I'm not property, I've always been human, I've always been a person, then we will continue to remind you by saying Black Lives Matter. Take it away, Danielle.
Wow, two very profound statements from both Cynthia and from Lady Deborah. And I just want to say ditto, ditto, ditto. We need to be reminded. Everybody needs to be reminded, not just African Americans and not just people of color. Everybody needs to be reminded, especially of the statement that Deborah just made. We're humans. We are humans. We count. We deserve to have a voice. We deserve to be heard. We deserve to have feelings and emotions, and we deserve to have liberty and freedom just like everybody else. And so we're asking you to pay attention to this now. We've been asking. Here's the thing. We've been asking for you to pay attention to it. Like she said, 401 years, we have been asking to, hey, please recognize we're humans. You don't have the right to make us slaves. You don't have the right to take us away from our native country and bring us to a strange place. But now that we're here and we're United States citizens, we have the rights that everybody else does. So wonderful statements. I love Cynthia's statement, and that's a wonderful way to think about it. All cancer is important, but right now for this month, we're focusing on this particular one. The same goes with us. All lives matter. All lives matter. We're just focusing on Black Lives Matter for right now. Thank you.
Okay, did anyone else? Linda?
I'd like to just add a little bit to that. I ditto again what Deborah said and what Danielle said. And one of the things that comes to mind for me is that it has to do with equality and equity. You know, as Deborah and Danielle stated, you know, we didn't have a choice in coming. Our ancestors didn't have a choice in coming here, but others did. And, you know, on the slave ships, the strongest survived. The strongest survive. There's no doubt about that. All that they had to go through, the strongest survive. So when they got to America, you know, they were looking for equality. You know, they want everybody to have the same thing. You know, everybody has an opportunity. But we came as a second class. Well, I won't even say second class citizens. We came, as they said, as property. So I think what we're looking for now is equity. You know, and there's a difference between equity and equality. You know, with equality, I think people who are not Black or brown, they're not of color, not of color, they have had equality. But for us to be able to get to where we want to be, we need to have a little equity. So as she said, you know, all lives matter, but right now we're trying to focus on having these lives of people who weren't given the opportunity, you know. So there may be something that you all have seen, a little video about equity and equality. I would recommend you to Google it. And one of the things that they have in there is a picture of 3 young people who are watching a game. You may have seen it. They're watching a game over a fence. There are 3 of them. The one on the left is, and they're, by the way, they all have crates to stand on, and they're all the same size crates. The one on the left is tall. He's standing on the crate, and he doesn't need to have it. The one in the middle, the crate gives him a little more of an advantage. He sees a little bit better. But the one on the far right, same size crate, he can't see. He's too short. He's peeping through the little holes in the fence. Okay, that's equality. But equity, the next little picture you see, they've taken the crate away from the young man on the left that's tall. The young man that's in the middle, he still has his, he sees well. But the one on the right now has the crate that the young man had that is tall. So he can really see, so he's excited about seeing the game. So he has equity. So I think what we're looking for lives that matter is, again, all lives matter. You got the equality, but we need equity. We need equity. Equity is when you give them what they need. We all didn't start at the same place. Equality, we all start at the same place. Equality would be good, but we didn't all start at the same place. So what we need now is equity.
Wow, all of those responses were awesome. And yeah, if we could just all be able to start at the same place in housing, in education, in the way things are handled with criminal justice, all of these things are very important. Let's get to that equal standard, the way we are paid, all of that matters. So great question, and thank you for submitting this question to us. Moving on to the next one. The question is, what is the relationship of arts to activism now? And they're asking for the perspective of a writer, actor, any type of artist, as well as patron, supporter, or community member. And so let's hear from Melissa and Danielle, and then I'll chime in on this one too.
As an actor and a filmmaker, I would say that my art has been a way for me to share my truth in a non-negotiable way. So as the second question alluded, a lot of people are having these really impactful conversations, and everyone feels like they need to have a position. But as an artist and as a writer and as a filmmaker, my work allows me to express my truth and my lived experiences in a way that just is. And it's not something that someone can say, well, that's not true, or you know, that's exaggerated. It is 100% unapologetic from my lens. And I think in general, artists, we tend to, and that's whether we are writers or painters or sculptors or actors or filmmakers, we transfer what we are feeling or what we need into what we do. So we're able to express ourselves and our heart and our pain and our trouble and our confusion in this other way that communicates with other artists in a beautiful way, but also connects with people that aren't artists, that are like still touched by what we have to say and what we have to share.
That was awesome. Awesome. She took all of my thoughts, but what I wanted to also add on or express, besides saying ditto, is how I've been watching how the film industry. I love movies. I'm a professional movie watcher, whether it's at home or I go to the cinema. I love to watch movies. And so what I have noticed in the past years, or even when I was growing up, it was like in the 1970s sometimes. Yes, I was alive during the 70s. We'll talk about that later. But during that time, I remember hearing a statistic that there's more women on the face of the earth than there are men. And I said, for real? Is that true? And they were like, yeah, that's true. There's more women on the face of the earth. But when I went to the movies to see, these wonderful movies, yes, there were women in the movies, but the women weren't playing the lead roles and the women weren't doing that. And we won't even talk about the lack of Black people in movies during that time. And that has changed a lot, and I'm very grateful for that. But when I was growing up, all of the movies had male superstars and male heroes and things like that. And I have noticed over the course of the years, and especially immediately, that is changing. Even in television shows, that is changing, which I think is fantabulous. I know we're talking about women, but I'm getting there. And I think that that's wonderful now that we can see more women in prominent roles or playing the lead, or the whole movie is about a woman, Little Women, and other things. Wonder Woman, well, we won't even talk about that. But I'm so glad to see that shift and that focus change. So now women are more of the storytellers now, and women have the lead roles. And I said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is great. This is changing. Because now I'm seeing that curve also happen in movies for African Americans as well. Because I spend as much money as I spend in the movies and at the movies and buying popcorn. That's a whole nother thing we're going to talk about. As much money as I spend, I would love to see more people who look like me up there on the screen, or even behind the scenes, and directing and everything like that. So it's good to see how how industries, let me give them all credit, are turning the corner, and they're making that curve, and they're being more acceptable, and they're opening their eyes to, hey, there are more, let me say it like that, there are more storytellers out there that we need to get in front of the camera so they can help to tell the story so people can enjoy it. So I'm looking at into the arts in that perspective, and sharing this wonderful shift and this wonderful turn that I've seen happening. It's been a long time coming, and it's still not finished yet, but let's make sure the process doesn't stop.
All right. And what I'll add to that is, as a writer, I have the power of the pen to create stories that raise awareness around different topics and to inspire people to take action. And so in the novels that I've written, I've addressed topics such as colorism and bulimia, self-harm and cutting, and mental illness, and in family dysfunction. And it all generates some very interesting conversations. And so that's one thing that I can do with the things that I write, is to generate conversation and get people to take action. There was actually a physician that reached out to me after reading one of my books, and he said that he had stopped talking to Black women about bulimia because it's one of those eating disorders that a lot of people in the Black community just don't talk about, because we don't think of it as being a disease that affects, or not disease, but a condition that affects Black women. However, when you look at the numbers, you're actually seeing that there's just as many Black women as white women who are dealing with bulimia. And to have a physician tell me that that's what motivated him to start having that conversation, that told me I better keep on writing about different topics. And then on top of that, when it comes to Black history, I also have the opportunity to capture nuggets of Black history in the things that I create, so that it's not being downplayed and it's not being taken out of if they're taking it out of history books, I'm putting it back in with the things that I write. So I think that's where arts and activism truly come together with each of our roles, that we have an opportunity to do that. Okay, well, thank you, ladies.
Oh, one more thing. Can I add just one more little bit
sure
of thing? I think you made me think about it, and like you said, rewriting history, and oh my gosh, that's another area that we need to spend a whole session on, is how we're educating our children, and the textbooks and the history books that are in schools oh my gosh, how those need to be majorly redone and majorly updated, and it needs to be more accurate and just tell the truth, even if it hurts, even if it hurts, just tell the truth. And there really needs to be, and I hope this changes, more emphasis on getting our education and our history books updated with the true facts.
Yes, tell the whole story. And Danielle, I'm going to ask you to keep your mic on because I'd like for you to speak on this next question. My daughter and I have some minimal experience with marches and protests, largely through our church, such as Pride, Martin Luther King Jr. March, Walk for Our Lives, and now Black Lives Matter in San Antonio. The thing that impressed me most about the Black Lives Matter marches and protests here was the large number of youth and such a multi-generational and multiracial crowd that turned out. Can you give me any suggestions of how to best be an advocate at these events without stepping on the toes of other protesters? For example, I read that there are some chants and actions that I should not join in on as a white person, but I didn't know that at the time that we marched, nor did others, chanting, "I can't breathe," or raising fists. So Danielle, if you can speak on that one.
That is it's a great question, and it's a very thought-provoking question. Let me first start off by saying I'm not a march organizer, but if people come to the march to participate and to show support, I think we should let them participate as fully as possible with the chants, with everything, with the slogans, with the. I don't see any reason for anybody to be silent when you are there to voice your concern about something that is this important. I say chant away, honey. Raise your fist, say "I can't breathe," because you are there to show support and you want people to know that it's not just the Black people that can't breathe, it's all of us, because all of us are in this together. So I think inclusion definitely needs to be had, or I feel inclusion should definitely be had. And you should participate in the marches as a protester, the way everybody else is, and follow along with the group. That's my opinion.
And I agree too. Thank you, Danielle. And yes, first of all, the person that submitted this question, you did the right thing, first of all, by being present. And the world needs to see diversity when it comes to a movement that is bringing about change. So keep on being there. And if you have any question, just ask other people that are there. If that's, if you feel that you're not comfortable, you don't have to say what everyone else is saying, but just know that you have a voice and don't be silent. Whatever you do not be silent. So continue on with those marches, bring some people along with you, and keep taking a stand for what you know is right. So the next question, how do you respond to folks who are upset about statues being defaced and removed, who say this is a part of our history, so it shouldn't be removed? So Deborah and Linda, let's hear from the two of you on this.
Thank you, Cynthia. So there is something to be said about public vandalism and vandalizing public art. But what I think needs to be considered is, first of all, why are the statues there? What are they signifying? What are they celebrating? Typically, when you erect a statue, you are memorializing an event or memorializing a person. So why then are we memorializing the Confederacy? Why are we memorializing slave owners? Why are we upset, I would say, that the Republic of Texas is no longer the Republic because of the intent to continue to be slave owners. So Martin Luther King, one of his famous quotes says, "A threat to justice, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." So that statue that is memorializing Christopher Columbus when he was a pirate and a slave owner and a rapist, and I could go on and on and on, that is a problem. You are memorializing a criminal. So back to Danielle's comment about telling the truth in history, that needs to be told. So that's the challenge with the memorialization of people that oppressed another people. Would you stand for a statue of Adolf Hitler in this country? That is my drop the mic moment.
Ditto, Deborah. You're so right about that. I agree. I don't think we should deface any monument, anything like that. That's, it's criminal. You just don't do that. I also agree that we don't memorialize things like Hitler. I don't think you can go any place else in another country and see statues of people who were criminals or people who were accused of injustice. But there's a place for those things, for those statues. Guess where? It's called a museum. That's why we have them. You want to have them? Put them in a museum. The word history, History. You've got HIS and you've got STORY, his story. Tell all of those male stories. That's fine. Put them in a museum. That's where they need to be. And then those who would like to go and see them, by all means. It is a part of history. There's no doubt about that. But it's a part, it needs to be in a museum and then everybody can enjoy it. Okay. And because I think our taxes paid for that. So let's put them where all taxpayers can enjoy them, not just a few in Texas or wherever these statues or monuments are.
And Linda, let me add, when it goes into a museum, again, it has to be the whole story, not just part of the story. And that's the part that I would say, if I was out there protesting, I would be upset about, because the whole story has not been told. Oh, one more thing. I received an email today from Douglas McDonald. Okay, this may be a little political, so if it is, you can tell me to stop. But I received an email today from Douglas McDonald, who is the outgoing CEO of the Alamo Plan. And it was to raising funds for the expansion of Alamo Plaza and the Long Barracks and so forth and so on. And yes, it's a political subject, but I'm not politicizing it. So my response to Mr. McDonald was, when I can see that plan, that project is going to include the entire history of the Alamo, to include the natives, to include the Africans that were sold at that mission, to include the slaves that fought, then I will consider supporting it. But you want me to support a plan, and I don't even know that his story that you're going to tell about it is going to be the truth? Not today.
I'm glad that you provided that insert, and thank you both on your responses. What I'd like to do is take a look at the chat and read to you what some of our audience members have been doing in order to be involved in their community. So we have from Carol that she's being involved with Angolian refugees. Excuse me if I'm not saying that correctly. Gina has attended protests, having conversations with friends and family, and actively voting. Raymond has just completed Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. That's one that's on my list to read as well. Reading, studying how I, as a white person, have contributed to racism and what I can do now, trying to understand what it is like to be a Black person. Susan says that the main reason is that I have been educating myself on the issues by seeking out educational opportunities online. I have learned so much about Black history. I then can share that information with friends and family in our conversations. And let me see. Oh, and Raymond says, I have been intrigued by the Sunday evening TV series Love Country, in which the suffering of Black persons have been abused and used. I hadn't heard of that one. I need to watch that. Mark says, listening, leaning into the hard conversations, acknowledging my prejudice, researching to fill in the blanks in history. And Susan says, it helps to counter misinformation or the lack of information upon which opinions are based. And then finally, Susan also mentions remembering versus honoring. I think that was in response to the conversation around the statues. So thank you everyone for sharing, and please continue to share what you're doing. We appreciate that. Okay, so moving on to the next question. This reads, the Black Lives Matter protests I attended were very peaceful and meaningful, but many others here and across the country were not. I heard so many people say, how do they think violence will help? It just makes them look bad, etc. I am by nature a nonviolent person, but I understand the violence and frustration. Also, much of the violent acts were not committed by the protesters, but others. I also believe that sometimes some outrage and violence is necessary to. How do you think violence plays a role in protests? So Danielle and Linda, please share your thoughts.
That's a very good question. I think the whole reason, number one, that we're protesting is because an act of violence has happened somewhere, especially with the Black Lives Matter. That's the whole reason any protest happened, is because somewhere somebody had an act of violence against them. Whether it was the police or what have you, an act of violence was committed against them. So this whole protesting, the whole movement thing, the whole reason why we're here is based on violence and the response to how do we fix that. So that's the whole reason we're here, number one. So violence is what started the whole thing in the first place. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. If they just stole a piece of candy from the store and they made them pay it back, we wouldn't be sitting here. So violence is what started this whole process. It is unfortunate, it's tragic, and it's unfortunate. But at the same time, if we work to change things and do better and look inside first before we look at other people and point fingers, look inside first and judge yourself and clean up your own house, and then look around you and see what else can be done. That is important because it gets us to start thinking. It gets us to be activated and to start protesting. So it's unfortunate that violence started this whole thing, but at the same time, because of it, because this bad act happened, here's all the good stuff that can become of it. Now, the other point that the writer mentioned was a lot of the violence that's happening at some of the protests isn't done by the protester stores, but by outsiders who are coming in, or other people who are coming on the scene and getting involved. And that is truly unfortunate, but that is very accurate. So we need to look at that and not just think, oh, all these people are out here smashing up stuff and they're burning down stuff. No, not all of it. Maybe some, but not all of it. So look at the facts. Make sure you get the right facts from a reliable source. We'll talk about news media. That's a whole nother conversation in news coverage. But make sure you get the facts first and look at everything with a critical eye before you judge, because it's not everything that everybody is saying. It's not all these protesters going around. There are some outside instigators that are getting involved, that are helping to make it look bad for everybody, but that's not the true cause and the true reason for the protest.
I do. I agree with everything Danielle said. I think that when you see the protesters during the daytime, in the daylight, you see all different kinds of people, that some of them even have their kids. You see teenagers, you see lots of people, you see, people my age, you see lots and lots of people out there protesting. Speaking of the media, they'll stop and ask them, why you're here, what you believe. But then when the sun goes down and it gets dark, you have these other people who come out. Most of the protesters, if you notice, they're gone by the time it gets dark. Or if they are there, they're not a part of the violence. You've even seen where some of them are trying to stop them from throwing rocks or whatever they're doing. They're trying, they do that. So when people say, well, you don't think that that's going to hurt their cause? It goes back to what Danielle said again. You've got to really understand, do your research, know what's going on. That everybody out there is not about destroying, So why are they doing that? Well, it's not them that's doing it. It may be some people who are coming in from out of town to do it. Those kind of people who are getting it. They have no commitment to the community, that they want to go and raise hell, for lack of a better word. Okay, let's go and agitate and make it worse than what it is. They're not there about conversation. They're not there about trying to understand what's going on. They do not care. So, when the sun goes down, so that, now's the time for them to come out, they're cowards. They're there in the dark. You can't tell who they are. They have on black or have on hoodies or whatever. So you can't tell who they are, so that's what they want to do. So just remember, don't let that distract you from what it's all really about. It's not about the violence. It's not about that. Know what's going on. Remember those who were there in the daylight with their children and all these other different people. Remember that. That's the important piece of that.
Cynthia, may I comment, please?
Yes, sure. Go right ahead.
Danielle mentioned something that was very critical, and that's the media coverage. And I want to give a high five. I don't know if she's listening, but to a young lady. Her name is Bridget Cooley. She is a journalism student at Texas A&M San Antonio. And she writes for the San Antonio Sentinel. When the Black Lives Matter took steam with the George Floyd incident, this young lady realized that she did not have the tools to be an objective journalist. So she reached out to SACAM and asked if we could do a session to the journalism students about effective journalism. So we were able to use the expertise of Carrie Clack, who is the San Antonio Express News editor, actually she's on the editorial board, Dacre Brooks, who is a storyteller, the director of storytelling for the H.E. Butt Foundation, and Amy Shaw, who is recently retired Fiesta commissioner, who had a career in broadcast journalism at one time. Why am I even saying all of this? Because one of the things that we shared with those students is how powerful the words are that we use in being responsible in reporting. So I'm going to ask our listeners, our viewers, to just be aware that there is a difference between protest and riots. There is a difference between a gang member and a student. There is a difference between a man and a student. There's a difference between looting and protesting. So when you, and unfortunately, this is something that I learned, oh my gosh. So Carrie said that they'll write a story and they don't write the headlines. The unfortunate thing about that, so the paper, the publication, they're the ones that write the headlines, often based on the story. The unfortunate thing about that is how many people just read headlines. So as responsible people, we need to pay attention to exactly what the media is saying, listen with discerning ears, and make sure, as Linda and Danielle said, you get the entire story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you. And again, I believe Linda mentioned it. Don't let it distract you, because it can be a distraction from why are we even out here marching? What's the ask? What is it that is the protest all about? So don't let the rioting and the violence take you off of the focus of why people are out there peacefully protesting. So the next question, okay, this one is, what are actions you personally want to see taken to prevent depictions of Black women in the media that are harmful and or traumatic? So Melissa, let's hear from you first, and then Danielle, and I think I'll add something to it as well.
I think the first thing that I would like to see is more Black women telling their own stories. I think if the 5 of us were to tell our stories, they would be similar yet different based on the time in which we were born, where we grew up, where we lived, etc. So for television and film, especially, I feel like there needs to be more intentionality with ensuring that Black female voices are being heard as part of showrunners and creators, just to ensure that we are authentically sharing our lived experiences. I can't begin to guess or surmise what it's like to be a Japanese woman, and I wouldn't dare try to write a show or a movie about the experience of Japanese women in Europe or America or Latin America. And yet there are a lot of white men and women writing about Black women, and they are not Black women. And they're pulling from these stereotypes and these examples that are so extreme. And I just want the Black female voice to be supportive and reflected in what we see, to truly share from our lens and perspective what it is like to be us.
And again, she took my answer. But what she said was so powerful, and it's so true. I have walked on the face of this earth for a long time. No, I'm not telling you my age, but to see the experience of a Black woman on film or even on stage, and stage is my true heart as well. But there's not that many opportunities right this very second, right now. There's not that many opportunities to hear about a Black person's story, a Black woman's story. There's not that much material that is written. There's some, and some of them are good, that I've read. I haven't read all of them, and I have not even read all of them yet. But there still needs to be more, because there are still more stories that need to be told, and there's more stories that need to be heard. So I would love to see an overwhelming increase and influx of scripts and books and stories and movies that can be shared, especially books. Even children's books, that's a whole nother market. Even especially children's books. We need to see that. Our children need to see that. They need to hear that. We need to sit them on our laps and open up a book and say, here's Aunt Polly. Look what Aunt Polly did. And that needs to happen so we can pass that history on to our kids and our children and to the public and the community as well. So I would Oh my gosh, yes, I would love to see more published works. Yes, more theater works. Yes, more black directors and black writers and black producers and all of that. So you get the whole feel, and you get the whole story told from every single angle. And I think we're slow, like I said earlier, we're slowly but surely getting there. And it's going to take more people like Cynthia, and it's going to take more people like Miss Nance. It's going to take more people like Miss Deborah. It's going to take more people like Miss Melissa, who are good at creating things, or who are good at or encouraging those who are doing the writing and are doing the directing, to encourage them to, hey, keep going, because these stories need to be told. And people, when you hear about these plays and these books and these movies and all of these other things that are coming to a place near you, you need to go out and support it. That's a whole nother topic for discussion. Support the material, buy it, even if you don't read it, buy it, to show the support, to show that there is a desire to know those stories.
Amen. And what I'll add to that is the way that Black women are depicted in the media, it affects the way that we feel about ourselves, the way that other people view us. And so if all people see are baby mamas and people who are gold diggers and Jezebels, whatever you want to call it, if that's all they see, then that's what they're thinking we are all about, versus telling the stories of multidimensional women who are intelligent and independent and have loving relationships. We need to see more of that. And as both Melissa and Danielle have mentioned, by having Black women who are producers and creators of content, you can best believe we're going to see more of that. And also, one thing that I just heard yesterday, that the Oscars, there's some new Oscar inclusion rules that in order to have a film win Best Picture, they now have to promote diversity and inclusion both in front of and behind the camera. I love that. So if you don't have diversity somewhere in the mix, you will not win Best Picture. You can win some other awards, but not Best Picture. So this is how we bring about change. And this is the way that we will see a better depiction of Black women and all people being representative in front of the camera when things are happening behind the camera. Okay.
Yeah, may I just chime
Yes.
in really quick? I
Please.
think one of the things that I would like to our listeners and viewers to know is that there are a number of good stories that are written by Black women about Black women. Our challenge is getting those stories in front of mainstream audiences. So back to Linda's comment at the beginning about equity, right? We don't have the resources at our beck and call all the time to create those. We didn't build Hollywood. We, well, okay, let me rephrase that. All right. We were not the directors and producers and casting agents and writers in Hollywood. We don't have that entrenched history. So we have to break ground by getting our stories told. The stories are there. It's just we need the avenue to promote the stories.
And I'll add to that. I know we're trying to wrap up, but to piggyback off of what Deborah just said, it's ensuring that there are diverse voices and representation at the table in order to change the narrative that because a movie has Black people, that it is automatically a Black only audience viewing such television and film. And this is a conversation that consistently takes place in, these meetings where it's like, okay, well, 2 or 3 of your cast members are Black. it's automatically a Black movie, so we're only appealing to Black audiences, and that's not true. So it's reframing this idea that just because there are an equal number or an increased number of Black actors, example, Black Panther, that it's automatically a Black movie, and it's not. Like, it's a story. Like, we are telling a story through the medium of film, and regardless of what color you are, these actors and these directors and writers might be different than you, but we're still telling a story.
Oh,
And
Danielle.
what she said is crucial. Girl, what she said is crucial, because, and don't get me wrong, a Black story is great, and it deserves, though, just as good a treatment as if it was an all-white cast. That story, if it's a great story, deserves the marketing, it deserves the TV spots, it deserves everything. And it deserves us to go see it so we can be supportive of it. And that is so important. Some people shy away. I know that's going to shock you to the core. Some people shy away from Black movies. But some of the stories are so fantastic and so great. If you would just delve a little deeper and see that, and then go ahead and market the heck out of it like you would Steel Magnolias, there wouldn't be a problem, and everybody would see a great show, no matter what color their skin color, and they would enjoy it. So that, Melissa.
Excellent. And I know we're talking about the media, but I'll even make this plug for people to look at the books that you buy and examine your bookshelves and see how much diversity exists in the books that you buy for yourself and the books that you buy for your children. Are you mixing up in terms of diversity in the writers that you're supporting? So you can start right here, support this one. But anyway, moving on to the next question. And this one kind of ties into what we were talking about as far as all of the wonderful stories that there are about Black female experience. And we figure that this one is so extensive in order to provide in this particular call that we may have to tackle this one in pieces and address this also in other conversations. So, but tonight, the question is, are there particular stories of the female Black experience that you wish were told or produced more, whether locally or otherwise? And so, Melissa, I believe you had some examples, and also Deborah, if you could share.
So I'm going to give a high level example, and it's so basic. You're going to be like, oh, okay. What I would like to see is a more well-rounded representation of the interests and talents of Black women. And an example would be whether it's interests in sports, whether it's occupation. What we tend to see is this representation of Black women as like single mothers or drug addicts or you know, women of the night, prostitutes, sex workers, etc. But we are also doctors and lawyers and have other credentialed careers and areas of interest. And an example of this would be, I'm a golfer. And when I tell people that I am a golfer, they go, oh, really? And it seems to surprise them. So then I want to throw it back and say, why are you surprised that a Black woman is a golfer and has been golfing her entire life? And challenging these examples that we see of Black women in golf and in hockey. And, you know, we have these like really big examples of, you know, Black men in sports, whether it's football or basketball, and we have our Serena and our Venus Williams, but like Black women have interests in a lot of things. And I was at a photo shoot at a golf course, and we were on the driving range, and the photographer was talking to some gentlemen that were teeing off, and he was like, I hope you don't mind, we're just having a photo shoot here. And the guy's like, oh, it's fine, but she doesn't look like a golfer. And so both of us, and mind you, the photographer is Native. And so we both walk away like, so what does a golfer look like if I don't look like a golfer? Like, I'm here with my clubs, like very clearly striking the ball and probably giving more distance than you are, but whatever. But like, how do we challenge these ideas that Black women can be more than just the struggle, but can actually be successful and thriving and be educators and be in leadership positions and be knowledgeable and not have them second guessed because of their position? We don't need to double check with someone else to verify that what Dr. So-and-so said is true, because she probably has equal or more credentials than her non-Black counterparts. But and in general, I just want to see Black women represented in all of the things, whether it's golf or NASCAR or ballet or hockey, whatever it is, we can be there too, and begin reframing the idea that this is not just for white men or white women, but it's for everybody.
Oh, okay, Melissa, you said a mouthful, and I'm going to start kind of at the end, because I'm sure people are wondering, well, what does she mean that their credentials are probably more? Ooh, 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 ooh. Let me tell you. Because we always, as Black women, have to come to the table with so much more to be considered equal. And there is nothing equitable about that. But I spend, and I don't tell a lot of people this, so you guys are getting an insight. There we go, Danielle. I did like you. I got in the camera. I spent 27 years as an air traffic controller, and I think I did talk about this on the last call. You have to know that in order for them to trust me in an air traffic control tower, I had to have a plan A through Z and prove that I had a plan A through Z before I could even get there. When I started my career in 1985 in Oklahoma City, one of my lab instructors looked at me and said, "Why don't you go home and bake cookies for your sons?" So when Miss Melissa says that our credentials are more than, it is because they have to be more than for us to even have a seat at the table. So that's one. Two, we talked about, it's so funny, our run-throughs are so much longer than this call because we get on these tangents about stuff. But I highlighted a few African-American women right here from San Antonio whose stories are amazing. And since I just talked about aviation, I have to talk about Bessie Coleman. And Bessie Coleman, a lot of people know, and a lot of people don't, that she was an African-American woman barnstorming pilot. Where did she fly? She flew out of Stinson Field. She actually did some practice work right here in San Antonio. Jane Warren, first African-American female rancher to have her brand registered in Bexar County around 1870. And that's not $18.70. That is the year 1870. Elizabeth Terrell Wren, esteemed educator in the Edgewood School District, who fought for educating African Americans on the West Side, and now there is a school named after her. Let's talk about Ivy Taylor, whether you like her politics or not. Come on now. An African American woman, mayor of a city where there's only 7% African Americans. You know she has a story. And now she is the president of a historically Black college and university. Oh, and one more thing. We talked about Dr. Adina Lofton last night, who is the president of St. Philip's College, the only college, by the way, in the United States that is a historically Black college and university and a Hispanic Serving Institute. She is also a hidden figure. Dr. Lawson worked on the program at NASA to get Sally Ride in space. So don't play us short, don't play us cheap. We have stories, and our stories are amazing, and they need to be told. Okay, I'm gonna let my blood pressure settle down now.
and as oh, Danielle, go right ahead, please. Wait, take your mute off.
I thought I pressed that button. I promise you I did. And before we move away from this topic, I want to challenge the audience, because and I know I didn't ask permission to do this at all, but we would love for you to send us the names of African American women from San Antonio that you think need to be recognized for their good work. We don't care how long ago it was, but I know y'all know about more people than we do. So please send us that information as well, because we would love to share it with everybody else. Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. That's a great idea. I can't wait to see what names are brought up. So, and as I mentioned, this is one of those conversations that we really can't have just in this conversation tonight, because there's so many wonderful things that Black women are doing that are contributing to not only our local area, but around the world. So we will definitely have to continue that conversation. The next question: what actions would you like to see members of the white community who are not in positions of authority take to make space at the table? Melissa, let's hear from you, and then let's hear from Deborah again.
I have a list. So I'll start by saying I would encourage white community members to stop thinking that they need to be in a position of authority. I would encourage you to own the space that you are in. I would encourage you to ensure that you are knowledgeable about the topics at hand. Read all of the books, New York Times bestseller list, nonfiction. Check out Amazon. Check out Instagram. There's tons of ways to get up to date on what everyone is reading and how it's important. But have those conversations in your groups, whether it's with your coworkers and colleagues, whether it's partnering with your HR department to find out what DE&I work they are doing, what groups are available, what groups can be contracted, what contractors can be used to brought in to facilitate these conversations, what affinity groups, et cetera, can be created to better support the members within your corporate community. Take back your power, and don't feel like just because you're not a VP or a CEO that you don't have a voice, because you do. And there are a lot of things that are happening below the executive level, if you will, that travel up and can really be instruments of change. I have some colleagues and friends that work at some major national companies that departmentally were fired up about the BLM movement, and were regularly scheduling appointments with their VPs and their executive directors to discuss how their leadership had really failed at addressing current events. And after months and months of revisiting, they finally were like, can you provide us with resources so that we can get outside help, because we don't know what we're doing. So do not feel like you don't have a space. I also think it's important to know your company and know the climate and be able to navigate the politics of that, because some organizations are not going to be readily excited and ready to have these conversations. So you've got to be strategic and aware and be able to read the room and know who are my allies in this fight. But also do not lose heart, because just because we present something as an opportunity for change and development does not mean people will be like, oh yes, I want this thing. People are resistant to things that are new and that are foreign and that they don't feel comfortable with. And so be prepared for a marathon and not a sprint. This is work that takes time. And I have a boss that used to say, how do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant one bite at a time. So be prepared to take it one step at a time in order to accomplish these bigger goals that you have.
And Melissa, before Deborah speaks, there was a question in the chat about how do you become an ally? So if you could maybe offer some.
Sure. So start with identifying what you don't know. So if there are topics that you are hearing, words that you are hearing, subjects that still kind of make you scratch your head, go check out the New York Times bestseller nonfiction list. I know it changes frequently, but there are a lot of authors that are writing about anti-racism. And there's I think it's Boston University. There's an anti-racism center. It's dedicated to this type of research. Just do a basic Google search of anti-racism and look at the items that pop up and prepare yourself for the personal work, because you've got to do the work to say, where am I deficient? Where are my blind spots? Reflect and marinate on that, because it'll be a game changer for you if you're really doing it right. And then go over it again, because now you're in a position, because your eyes have been opened and you have this new knowledge and you've reflected, your ears and your eyes see and hear things differently. So when you're in your social groups, when you're at dinner, when you're at happy hour, when you're at your driveway social distance party, you can say, oh, someone is making a comment about X, Y, and Z that was in the news, but that's not correct. That's not accurate. Let me go ahead and correct that person based on what I have learned, and also share what I have learned with these people. So as an ally, you really become an educator within your community group, and you own a piece of this marathon that we are all in together. But it's also, I think, approaching it with an open hand and saying, I don't know everything, but I've spent some time reading and reflecting and asking questions in safe spaces like this. And I feel confident to facilitate this conversation with you. And if there's something that I don't know, well, I'll come back to you and we'll figure it out. But there's no expectation that you need to know everything today or tomorrow, because this is an evolving thing. I hope I answered your question.
I want to give a resource. The Smithsonian, if you Google racial education, the Smithsonian has an amazing website that is available for all ages to help bring about awareness. One of the things that I will encourage you to do, and I think we talked about it on our last call, is the awareness piece is huge. And you may have at your place of business or where you normally hang out or whatever, there may be a few African Americans that you want to engage, and you may find out that they don't want to engage. Don't lose heart. I am proudly 62 years old, and so I have 62 years of PTSD and dealing with racism. So if I don't want to engage on a day, it's okay, and you need to let it be okay. The sincerity will come through based on what we see you do, what your neighbors see you do, your coworkers, all of that. You can't flip-flop. This is not the flavor of the day. This is our life. And as you can see, just like basketball made a statement, the NBA, they said, we're not playing. And even though it was for 2 days, they didn't play. The Oscars are now saying, no, we need diversity, even though I would really like to know what that really means. But nonetheless, they are acknowledging that some things need to change. So this is not the flavor of the day. So you can't pet us on the head. You can't appease us. And if you have African Americans that aren't engaging, because they very well could be waiting to see how genuine are you, or because I don't necessarily want to jump through hoops to teach you, and this is going to go away. Don't expect us to do that. And then making space at the table starts with understanding that I belong at the table to begin with, and letting other people know that I belong at the table. If I'm not there, ask the question, well, wait a minute, are we missing someone? Are we missing a viewpoint? How can we, as Melissa said, we'll say market appropriately to African Americans when there's not an African American at the table? How can we even have a conversation about diversity and inclusion and I'm not included in the conversation? It's just, so you need to ask the question, hey, doesn't someone else belong at the table? So self-awareness is very helpful. I'm finished.
Thank you both. And I appreciate the question about how to become an ally, because that's very important. When we one other resource for you, and I may have mentioned this on the last call, I keep this on my desk, the issue of O Magazine with Breonna Taylor on it. On every single page at the bottom, there's a banner that tells you action that you can take to be an anti-racist, and even how to be an ally, resources to read, places to go. It's excellent. So I recommend that everybody get a copy of this particular issue. The final discussion point that I wanted to provide an explanation, because people have been talking about Karens and Beckys and Kens. And some of you may be wondering, why are people referring to Karen, Beckys, and Pens? You've heard about Barbecue Becky and Permit Patty or Corner Store Caroline. You know, it sounds real cute. You see these memes, and but the stories are not cute at all. It's actually quite dangerous. And what this is referring to, and by the way, I'm referring to a small subset of people. So hopefully I'm not talking about anyone that's on this call, but if I am, I'm pointing it out because this is what has to be done. It has to be called out. But we have situations where you have a white person who sees a person of color who is doing nothing illegal, nothing dangerous, nothing that is unlawful. Usually is a matter of minding their own business in front of their home, in their car, barbecuing while black, sitting on the beach while black, walking their dog while black, standing and looking at the stars while black. And then someone says, well, they're doing something wrong and I'm going to call the police. So now you just wasted taxpayer money and officers' time, and is exhaustive, and it is disgusting and dangerous, because now people are being arrested for something that is something that they haven't done anything to be arrested for, and then sometimes even killed. You have back in 1955, 14-year-old Emmett Till was accused of flirting with the white woman. A white woman accused him of flirting with her. He was then brutally lynched. He was murdered because of this accusation. 6 decades later, she admitted that she lied. So I want you to think about that and let that sink in. So as we hear these stories, if you see something, say something. If someone is acting out in a way where they are falsely accusing someone, you need to speak out on that. And again, I hope it's not any of you, but really do that self-reflection. And if it is, it's time to stop. Now, the other part of that is, again, you know, just being aware of the things that you see as it relates to people of color, Black people, Hispanic people. Just because someone doesn't look like you doesn't mean that they're wrong, and doesn't mean that they're doing something wrong. So just remember, as it's been said in this conversation, Black people, people of color are all human. You cut our skin, we all bleed the same way. So with that, did anyone else have anything else to add to that? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for participating in this conversation. Thank you again for submitting your questions. And also thank you for what you've put in the chat in terms of the actions that you have taken. We are all focused on trying to make this a better place, our country, our world. Don't forget that it doesn't have to be anything big and grandiose. You can do small things, write letters, send messages to your Congress people, your senators. Make sure you vote, and also make sure that you wear your mask and stay safe. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the Classic Theater, Kelly and Ruben. Thank you as always for your technical support. And good night to everybody. I'll turn things back over to Kelly.
Thank you, Cynthia. And thank you, ladies, for being brave and authentic and telling it like it is. So I feel very honored and grateful that you have joined us and have been sharing your truth. Thank you, viewers, for your questions. I also have realized, because we're live on Facebook, that there are other questions and comments. So just to let everyone know, we are going to be gathering Facebook things because they don't go directly here to chat. And we are also going to be gathering resources that were named and put them on our website. So you can know about Cynthia's books coming out on the 6th of October and November 25th. And Melissa has a short film that we are hoping to show you in the future and discuss that as well. I'm not naming, oh, and there's an amazing conversation coming up at Trinity tomorrow night. So all of these will be in a resource on our website tomorrow, and we will add, and we'll take your questions because I know the women have said, even now, if you have questions that you want to email us at Classic, they'll work to get an answer back to you, and or we'll talk about them in January. We're planning to come back for a 4th part of our series. My guess is some people might want to talk before then, and we're all open. But for the 4th part of our series, January 27th at 7 p.m., it's another Wednesday night, in a new year, after an election, after more time with COVID, and hopefully COVID going away, for whatever happens in the next 3 months, we're going to come back and see where we are January 27th. Let's see, anything else I have to tell you other than just email us at the Classic. And thank you all. And all of you take care of yourselves and each other, as Lester Holt says. He's my favorite at night these days on the news. So take care of yourselves. Thank you for being a part of this, and have a good night.